morning. I'm late, but I'm here. For those of you who haven't heard, I live in Texas and we've had kind of a crazy week around here, to say the least. It started Sunday night. It got really, really cold, and then it just kept getting colder. We lost power, I think it was Monday night. And it was down, I think, below zero Monday night. So our house got cold really, really fast. I think the coldest it was in here was 52 degrees. So we had to go back to the little house on the prairie days around here and test our survival skills for a few days. So power came back on yesterday, and then our pipes burst, which I had been reading reports of this. Like, I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I understand extreme cold, but in Texas, we are just totally unequipped for anything like this, which means the roads don't clear it off. We don't have snow tires or chains on them, or our houses are even built differently because we're built for heat. So we've got these big windows in our homes. Insulation's not the best. And then, of course, there was the whole power grid issue. So we had rolling blackouts from Monday night until yesterday morning when the power finally got restored completely. But yeah, it was kind of a crazy week. We spent a lot of time around our gas fireplace, and we're super thankful that the propane company came out. We realized our propane was low sometime Sunday night, and they were able to get out here on Monday and give us at least 100 pounds to get us through the last couple days, thank goodness. And the water didn't go off until yesterday when the pipes started to thaw out. So I was in the shower. We suddenly lost water pressure. I jumped out. I yelled to Craig, "Hey, I think our pipes burst." So he quickly went out to the street, turned off the water main. He dug through the snow, and he told me like he had to get through, I want to say something crazy, like 6 inches of dirt to find it with his bare hands. And he turned it off. And I realized that I am married to a Boy Scout. So anyway, we got the water turned off. We went to Lowe's. We got supplies because you can't even try to get a plumber right now. There's so many people with so many issues. But we were able to get some supplies, and Craig was able to repair it yesterday. So I'm feeling super thankful, super blessed that everything's back to normal today. I was able to get a shower, wash my hair, dry my hair. I'm still in my PJs, and I'm running a little bit late this morning, but otherwise we are okay. So I'm super grateful for that. And I know that there are a lot of people that are not in as good of a position this morning, that have had just massive water damage or have been without heat and power for days. And my heart goes out to everybody that's going through this. So I just wanted to update you guys. I know that there were a few questions in some of our groups about if we were affected, and I have basically been mostly offline the past couple of days. We got even when we didn't have power, we didn't have cell service because everybody was using their phones, since everyone in the area was without power. So we couldn't even do basic things. Like, I could send text messages, and that was about it. So anyway, it's kind of weird to be back to normal, but I have a super great appreciation for so many things, like taking a shower with the lights on, for instance. I had to take a shower in the dark the other night, and we're lucky that our water heaters are gas powered, so we at least had hot water for most of the time. We also had to haul hot water down to the horses every few hours because their trough kept freezing over. We were afraid our pool was going to freeze. Thank goodness it didn't. I know so many people who had their pools freeze, but it's been really crazy. And I think that if nothing else, that it's helping us to take some preparations if this happens again. I've been talking to Craig. I'm like, should we get a generator? I'm thinking maybe we need one. But anyway, our little house on the prairie days are coming to a close. And I didn't even have the ugly Target dress to wear. I mean, come on. Anyway, welcome to Coffee Chat. This morning's Coffee Chat has been a long time coming. So I've been mentioning the Enneagram for the past few years, and to varying degrees. I've had you asking, to learn more about it or what it's all about. And I've honestly not felt equipped to really talk about it much because, other than kind of doing a deep dive on my own type, I've never really educated myself across the board about the Enneagram. But as an Enneagram 5, which I've mentioned many times before, that is one of my, I don't want to say flaws, but one of my downfalls is thinking that I have to be an expert on something to talk about it. And I can go down rabbit holes of acquiring knowledge And it's just been something that has been um, on my mind for the past few years. So I finally decided last week after I mentioned it that I was going to do a deep dive and talk about it today. So you may know more about the Enneagram than me, and I apologize in advance, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it and why it matters. So when I first started learning about the Enneagram, it was like this whole new world opened up for me. Not only did I feel more confident, yes, it can bring about confidence because I understood myself better and how I related to the world. I no longer felt different or felt bad about my personality type because um, I realized that I could reframe the things that I thought were bad or that I thought made me faulty or different or whatever. So I think that self-awareness was such a huge part of learning about my Enneagram type. But I also found that it improved all of my relationships across the board because now I truly understand everyone in my family and how I relate to them and how things that, my husband's an Enneagram 7, which we are complete opposites in so many ways, and the ways that he would deal with, for instance, a stressful situation like this week where he's like, yay, it's an adventure. And I'm like, oh, I'm scared. It's fear. It's whatever. I can now see that that's his way of handling and coping with the stressful situation. And I have a completely different way of doing that. So the Enneagram is giving me some depth to the context in my relationships and how I relate with others, and especially with my kids, and seeing how the three of them are so different and how their Enneagram types come into that. It's helped me be a better parent. It's helped me be a better wife. It's helped me be a better leader and business owner and all of the things, just learning more about this. If you've done personality assessments in the past, you may have done 16 personalities or Myers-Briggs. You may have heard of these personality types. The difference between that and the Enneagram, for instance, as a Myers-Briggs, I am an INFJ, which is introverted, intuition, feeling, and judging. You can do that test at 16personalities.com to kind of determine what you are, but that personality type is basically your nature, whereas Enneagram is your nurture. Enneagram is comprised of the things that have happened to you and the experiences that you've had in your life. So I think it's important to know both, but I personally like the Enneagram more because I just feel like it's just been so much more insightful. And I remember reading my Enneagram for the first time, and I heard someone say, you'll know your Enneagram type when you cringe as you're reading the description. And I had the opposite thing happen to me. I started crying when I read the description because I felt so seen and so understood for the first time in my life. So when you hit upon the right type, then you'll know it, because you're going to have that emotional response to it. But I do want to caution you, if you've never done an Enneagram assessment and you don't know what your type is, don't read through the descriptions and try to type yourself because you might be wrong. And I found that out a few years back. I thought I was, and I have kind of overlap with a 1, a 3, and a 5, and I even have a lot of 6 in me too, which I found out I am a 5-wing 6, which we'll get into the wings in a minute, and that explains it. But it's super important for you to actually do the assessment and know what you are before you read the descriptions and try to figure that out. So anyway, back to the basic definition of what the Enneagram is. If you missed out, this is nature versus nurture, whereas the Myers-Briggs personality assessment is nature, the Enneagram is more nurture. It is a personality model that dates back more than 1,000 years. So this thing has been around a really long time. We don't really know the origins of how it began, but recently it has truly exploded in popularity. You're going to find Instagram accounts dedicated to it, and podcasts and books, and there's so much media out there focused on the Enneagram. And I think that this is because so many people are discovering the importance and the power of this and the power of the self-awareness and knowing yourself and knowing the people around you and how you relate with the world and how you can use all of this to your advantage, because you truly can. I think that unlocking this was a huge part of me really just kind of stepping into who I am and being more authentic and being unapologetically myself. And there's a lot of power in that. So the Enneagram consists of 9 main overarching types, and these all interact with one another in unique ways. The model also features the wings, which is a way of describing when an individual primarily shows characteristics of one type, but they share a few with another type as well. So the wings are going to mostly be on either side of your type. So I'm a type 5. My wings would be types 4 and type 6. The way I had this described to me recently by Tracy O'Malley, who is an Enneagram expert and coach, is that your wings are kind of like your tool belt you have on each side, and you pull them out at different times and utilize the tools from each of the wings. It generally primarily focuses on internal personality traits and attempts to describe deep motivations, fears, and emotional drivers rather than purely behavior. So the Enneagram gives people a working guide to understanding all of these motivations, and it can help with personal growth and self-awareness, which we've already covered, but it categorizes people into 9 broad types, and we're going to go over those. So first off, before I give you the brief overview of the types, again, the caution, if you haven't done the assessments yet, before you really start to dig in and say, oh, I identify with that, or that's definitely me, then take an assessment. There's a free one at truity.com, TRUITY.com, that you can take that's really insightful and very accurate. You can also do a paid test at EnneagramInstitute.com, and that one gives you a little bit more insight if you want to do a deeper dive into it. So I'd recommend starting with the Truity test, and then if you want to kind of get deeper into this, then go to the Enneagram Institute and check out their resources over there and maybe do the paid program. All right, so let's go through the 9 types. So first off, there are the heart types of the Enneagram, and this is the way that Truity separates them. I could just go through types 1 through 9 and kind of tell you the descriptions, but I like that they separate them into the heart types, the head types, and the body types, because I think this is important context. So the head type, I'm sorry, we're going to start with heart types. So the heart types react with their emotions first. And they connect with other people on an empathetic level and make sense of the world by understanding their feelings about it. The 3 types that fall under heart types are type 2s, type 3s, and type 4s. And we're going to talk about each one of these. These types value things like emotional support, recognition, and inclusion. And types 2, 3, and 4 are the heart or feeling-centered Enneagrams. So type 2 is categorized as the giver. 2s want to be liked, and they find ways that they can be helpful to others so that they belong. This type fears being unlovable. Type 3s are the achievers, and 3s want to be successful and admired by other people and are very conscious of their public image. Type 3s fear failure and not being seen as valuable by other people. Type 4 is the individualist. 4s want to be unique and to experience deep, authentic emotions. Type 4s fear that they are flawed and are overly focused on how they are different from other people. I think it's important that you hear the fears that go along with these two, because a lot of times the fear is really kind of going to help you to determine what your type is, especially if you're falling into a couple of different categories like I do. You're going to have to do a deeper dive into each one of these to kind of really figure out which one you fall in, because a lot of them might sound like they're your personality type. Next up are the head types of the Enneagram. So these are the type 5, 6, and 7s, and this is what I am. Head types react with analysis first. Yes, we do. They connect with other people on an intellectual level, and they make sense of the world by understanding the systems and theories that underlie what they observe. These types are primarily focused on control, which they gain by maintaining stability, security, and competence. Types 5, 6, and 7 are the head-centered types. So type 5, which I am, is the investigator. Also, I think it's been called the researcher. But 5 seek understanding and knowledge and are more comfortable with data than other people. The biggest fear of the type 5 is being overwhelmed by their own needs or the needs of others. Type 6 is the skeptic. So 6s are preoccupied with security. They seek safety and they like to be prepared for problems. For the type 6, the greatest fear is being unprepared and unable to defend themselves from danger. The type 7 is the enthusiast, which is my husband. 7s want to have as much fun and adventure as possible and are easily bored. A lot of times you're going to hear people discuss the Enneagram. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so envious of the type 7s. Like everybody wants to be a 7. Type 7s fear experiencing emotional pain, especially sadness, and actively seek to avoid it by staying busy. The body types of the Enneagram are the types 8s, 9s, and 1s. And body types react with an instinctive gut feeling. They connect with other people based on their physical sense of comfort, and they make sense of the world by sensing their body's reaction to what is happening. The primary drive for this triad is to maintain their independence and limit control from outside influences. They respond by being overly controlling, overly passive, or overly perfectionistic. Types 8s, 9s, and 1s are the body or gut-centered Enneagram types. So type 8 is known as the challenger. I have a type 8, and she's my 16-year-old. 8s see themselves as strong and powerful, and they seek to stand up for what they believe in. The greatest fear for a type 8 is to be powerless, so they focus on controlling their environment. Type 9s are the peacemakers, my daughter Aubrey. Peacemakers, 9s like to go with the flow and let the people around them set the agenda. Type 9s fear pushing people away by prioritizing their own needs, and they tend to be passive. And you can see how knowing these things about your kids really helps you to parent better, because with Aubrey, I have to sometimes pin her down to just like talk about what her own needs are instead of wanting to serve other people or make them happy. So this is super important to understand, and also to see the healthier levels of the Enneagrams, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Type 1s are the perfectionists, and 1s place a lot of emphasis on following the rules and doing things correctly. Type 1s fear being imperfect and can be extremely strict with themselves and others. So again, where the wings are concerned, I can see this in Aubrey a lot. She's a type 1, and she's a type 9, and she has a type 1 wing. I can see that perfectionistic stuff happening in her too. So I talked a little bit about the healthy levels of the Enneagram. So within each of these types, you function at different levels of health, basically, of mental health. And as you move up through them, you start to function at different levels. So at your lower levels, you're functioning more in the fear-based parts of your Enneagram. And as you feel safe and secure, you start to function more in the upper levels of that. And as you function up there, you move into a different Enneagram type. So for instance, me as a 5, through the years, I could see early on some of my biggest issues as a 5 were, scarcity of resources. And that's what 5's fear is, like, that there's not enough knowledge, enough anything. And as I've become healthier through the years and really become aware of this, I don't really deal with that much anymore. Or I used to feel really overwhelmed with other people's needs, and would just like close myself off because of that. But as I've gotten healthier and more aware of that, I don't feel that overwhelming need. I don't feel overwhelmed by other people's needs anymore. So as a 5, whenever I start to get healthier, I move into a type 8, which is interesting because it's not one of my wings. But I do see that I'm more willing to stand up for the things that I believe in and be more of a challenger and use my voice more whenever I'm feeling like I'm in the healthier level of a 5. So it's fascinating, and there's so much information out there. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface on this, but it's so worth taking a few minutes to take the assessment. And if it's something you've never done, then it's a fun self-care thing to do. Like this weekend, sit down and carve out some time to do an assessment, and then really just do some research and fall down into the rabbit hole of the Enneagram. I promise you, you're going to learn so much about yourself. You're going to learn so much about the people around you. If you're looking for some resources to get started with, definitely go to the enneagraminstitute.com. There's tons of information there. Truity.com has a lot of information. A book that I highly recommend if you want to do a little bit of a deeper dive is The Road Back to You by Ian Morgan Cron and Suzanne Stabile, I believe is how you say her name. But Ian Morgan Cron also has a podcast called Typology, which I love. Once you have determined your type, you can go back through and listen to the episodes of people that he interviews. He's also done some panels earlier on in the podcast that you might want to check out where they talk about a lot of different types. But I found those super insightful. But there are tons of resources out there. I will drop a link to his book in the caption if you want to check that out. One of the things I did, and this totally makes sense as an Enneagram 5, when I got this book, I sat down in Barnes & Noble with a cup of coffee, and I had Craig and Aubrey and Ava with me at the time. Devin was still in college, but we went through the book and I read each of their types to them. And actually I had them take the test first so we knew what the assessment came back with. And then we went through and read each other's types and talked about how we each respond to different things in different situations and how we react differently. And I just think it was such a cool thing to do as a family, for us to just have that awareness of each other and why we react in certain ways. And now it's funny because we'll have a situation come up, like the other day when the power was out and we were playing a game on the couch. We were playing guess when the power comes back on. So we were trying to guess within like a minute of when the power would come back on. And I said 9:01 and Ava said 9:05. And then she said, no, wait, 9:13. And Craig said, no, you can only pick one. So I started watching this interaction between the two of them where the type 7 and the type 8 which the type 7 has a little bit of challenger in him too, because it's one of his wings. And then the type 8, who is the challenger, were butting heads over how we were going to play this game that we had going on. So the type 7 came up with the fun adventure idea of the game, and then they started to argue over the rules. And it was just so funny to me because I finally stopped them and said, okay, 7 and 8, here's what's going on. But it's just a lot of fun to have those insights into your family and have that self-awareness. So anyway, I would love to hear you. I would love to hear from you. What is your Enneagram type? Tell me in the comments and let me know what resources you found that are helpful, or if this is brand new to you. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on it. And I hope you all have a warm and safe weekend, and I will see you back here next week. Bye.